Welcome to Hobbit Hoopla.
Hoopla!
The unofficial podcast of Middle Earth.
Ooh.
Look at us.
In HD.
Look at us. It's a video podcast now,
We're
everybody.
back.
Oh my goodness. If you're out here listening to us, thank you for listening. But if you would like to see our beautiful faces and Chris's incredible Hobbit cosplay he's got going on, then pop on over to Spotify. You can check out the video podcast, or our YouTube channel. You can check out the video podcast there. We got so much exciting things happening. It's a new Hoopla, but the same Crewpla. That's right, folks.
Oh,
Hoopla.
That's why they pay him the big bucks.
Good job,
That's
Danny.
right. I'm here with all my wonderful Hoopla Crewpla friends. Joining me, as always, is the lore master, Andy Smith.
Thanks, Jamie. Andy Smith here, connoisseur of many nerdy things, DC, Marvel, Star Wars, and finally, we are back to Lord of the Rings, right where we started with this Fellowship of the Ring review. Excited to do it with you guys.
It's been a long time coming, and we're finally here, joined, as always, by everybody's favorite little hobbit, Chris Pio.
I wish Secret Invasion had never come to
Do
me.
not speak of
my
these
God,
things.
He said it. He said it. We are so back. I'm so excited to be back in color, in HD, talking Hoopla with the Crewpla. And what better way to come back in 2024 than to do it with the Lord of the Rings?
My goodness, the greatest movies ever made. And I know one person who certainly agrees that these are the greatest movies ever made because he was the star of the show, our favorite wizard. Once the gray, now the white, Jake Laxer has risen again, joining us on the podcast.
Hey.
You got musical sound effects? You got ethereal music? What do you got for me?
Nope, you gotta sing your own sound effects, buddy.
Okay, that's Chris, can we get the Halo theme song?
That's a different property. We don't have the rights for that.
Microsoft
Just put
or Bungie.
theory music. Just put
Yeah,
theory music.
Paramount Plus, is that how we need to get? I don't know. Doesn't matter. Jake Laxer here, lover of all things TV and movies. Great to be back. Yeah, we're doing the video thing, so that's magical. Diving into this fantasy world. So let's do the thing. Hopefully, I don't
You guys
delete
look
the
great.
episode this time.
It's nice to meet you all. I've never seen your faces before. It's really great.
Yeah, it's wild.
Goodness.
Been doing this podcast for almost a decade without ever having seen each other's faces. But here we are. You guys are even more beautiful than I expected. And Jake has one little plant in the background. How nice.
I have two
How
plants.
nice.
I have two
I have
plants.
0 plants in my
It
background.
I
is
have
earthy.
the Lord of the Rings book right there. And so
Ooh,
does
I got
Andy.
the Lord of the
That's
Rings
right.
book right there.
Oh, mine sounds
Because
so
this
much.
is
Should I go
all
grab it?
we've ever wanted, folks. The Hobbit
we're
Hoopla
finally here.
podcast started because of Lord of the Rings. We started this podcast when the Rings of Power TV show came out, and it's been a long time coming, and we're finally here to talk about the Fellowship of the Ring.
And including all the relationships it may have with said show, Rings of Power, which on my rewatch, I have a lot of things to talk about.
Have you done a
in
rewatch?
relation to the Rings of Power?
I love that.
Not of the Rings of Power.
Okay.
I'm
that
sorry.
would be
let
fun.
me clarify. I'm watching Fellowship, which we're going to talk about today. So many things that I remembered from Rings of Power season 1 just kept popping up, and there's a lot to talk about and relate to, and I'm excited.
I can't wait to get into it. So thank you all for tuning into this episode of the Hoopla video podcast. Be sure to subscribe on Spotify, all the podcast apps and all that good stuff, YouTube. And Chris, where else can they find us if they want to stay up to date with the Hoopla?
Big things coming in 2024 from the Hoopla Podcast. If you'd like to follow along, you can find us on X, Instagram, and TikTok at Hoopla Podcasts. That's X, Instagram, and TikTok at Hoopla Podcast. Definitely follow along. Share your thoughts on the show. Share your thoughts on all the content that we're talking about. And we are excited to share with you the things we have coming for 2024.
Indeed, we are. Such as the things that some of us are currently wearing on our bodies that you can see now.
Finally.
Look at that.
Just
Hey.
like Andy's little hat there. Where did someone get that hat?
Guys, take a look at hoopla.podcastnetwork.square.site because the Lord of the Rings series is waiting for you. We have a Hoopla Podcast sweater over here. We got the beanie. It's cold outside. good old Rings of Power. So take a look at Hoopla.
I love it. And you know what? In celebration of this being the first video podcast episode, we're not going to take a little break. We're not going to be right back because we're right here, right now. We're diving straight into the Lord of the Rings, the Fellowship of the Ring. Oh my God. What an exciting, incredible movie. It's so nice to have a good movie that we watched to talk about on this podcast after so many years of disappointment with all the Marvel and Star Wars that we've been watching. But it's even better than I remembered from last year when I watched it.
Right.
It's so good. You get in there with Frodo and Sam and all their little buddies, and it's just a nice feel-good movie, and then it's scary, and then it's intense, and then the battle scenes are incredible.
Oh my God.
Jamie, is this one of those movies that, right, we're coming on over 20 years now, that just, it has staying power, even though, the CG isn't to this date, but it looks so good. It's so realistic feeling. It teleports you into a world, and every time I see it, more so from the last, I'm back in the world. Like it puts you back in, and it gets better and better over time. And also the writing's just better than all the fantasy we have out today.
That's true.
Yeah, I mean, this movie is a testament to grander cinematography of its time. To this day, everything is made up in CGI. They account for all of the storylines to be, handled because the story is appealing visually, and Avatar, for example.
You chose the one movie where the CG is good. Why would that be your choice?
The CG is good or bad doesn't matter.
Well,
his point still
my
stands.
point is the CG is good in Avatar, but the plot lines suck. So to compensate for the lack of storytelling, this is not Lord of the Rings is not that. It was able to accomplish both, and that's something that's so amazing because they focused on models and scales and classic cinematography
and humans in outfits.
Yeah,
right? Practical
and
effects.
they brought in real walking trees. They brought in
exactly
real
That's
orcs.
true. There's actually no CG in this movie. Those eagles, they grew over time to get that
genetically altered eagles.
When I saw
Those
when
are
I saw
American
them, I was
eagles,
like,
actually.
Peter Jackson really he nails it, especially with these giant eagles.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, to tame 60 eagles to use on set.
And Ian
over
McClellan
the course of shooting,
jumped off the tower of.
That's true.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy that he actually learned magic for this role because they didn't have any CG, so he's just a full-on wizard now.
It's that realistic.
16 years at the School of Arcane Technology.
And it's worth it because, hey,
Absolutely.
what a movie.
Why did those wraiths hiss like that? I've never heard a wraith hiss like that.
Just the way their acting coach told him.
Yeah.
No, the practical effects are very felt and realized in this film. The scale, like you said, Jake, I mean, you see large armies crossing sweeping landscapes all across New Zealand. New Zealand was the majority of the shoot, correct? I'm sure there were other places.
A little bit in the
some
UK.
snowy high mountain peaks, but sure, everything's shot in the UK these days. But I'll give this to you. It was not shot in front of a green screen. In fact, it was shot in front of a green scene.
Oh my goodness.
Shrek, he's magical too. Holy shit. Ian McKellen?
I'm gunning.
Is that you?
I'm gunning for that hosting job, JB.
Hey, you can have it.
It's but there's just from the very beginning when we open on the Shire, it just you start to feel this world right away. There's lots of good cinematographers and production sets out there that will make you feel welcome to the world right away. But like you said, Andrew, it's something where this is a staying power. You don't feel welcome in the world. You feel like you belong in the world.
Mm-hmm.
You are the hobbits smoking pipe weed in the Shire. You are the dwarves who have delved too greedily and too deeply, though we don't get to see many dwarves in this particular film.
Not living dwarves.
We'll talk about
we
that
see a lot of
later.
dwarf
Yeah,
corpses, which is
Not
fun.
living.
Watch the Hobbit trilogy.
The wood elves live in the forest of Lothlorien, and that's that's where they live. That's wood elves. That's what they're supposed to be. So every set is perfect and beautiful, and I think it's just a fully realized a scene from start to finish.
What
it is nice. Yeah, go on, Andy.
What I thought was, starting off in this film, they immediately introduce you to all the races through the opening kind of exposition. With Galadriel's voice over top.
The second age.
It gave you a good amount of information, and then immediately you're just transported into the Shire, which feels like a community. And then you start relating to the characters, and then the characters take you through the story. And I think that's the, when Tolkien wrote out the books, he ingrained you in Bilbo and Frodo and Sam, and then you just see the world through their eyes. It's so fantastical. If it's done in a different way, I don't think it hits as well. You meet the elves along the way, right? Especially in the extended editions. By the way, that's what we're reviewing today.
Absolutely.
There's more time to spend with the elves, and everyone loves that.
Yeah, you think I want to watch a movie for only 3 hours? No, thank you. Give me that 3 hours and 45 minutes.
Yes.
Yeah, the story, you're absolutely right, Andy. It's all about the characters, and we get great. I mean, I've said it a million times, and I'll continue to say it. Sam is my favorite character, as I think he is most people's favorite characters, or at least a lot of people's favorite characters. And his relationship with Frodo is the driving force for like 75% of the story of The Lord of the Rings, especially in this book, movie, where Sam is with Frodo from the very beginning, going off on this adventure. And even though he's afraid to take the step, the classic line of, if I take one more step, it's the farthest away from home I've ever been.
Honestly, that was pretty far away.
It's not that line.
Yeah.
I actually prefer, when I watch these movies, I prefer to watch the extended edition, which is the YouTube cut of the entire Fellowship of the Ring extended edition. But every time that Samwise takes a step, it plays that one scene. So it's always that one further step away from the Shire.
He's just so far away.
3 days to finish it. But...
Oh yeah, I was gonna say, how long is that video?
Should we do a watch along, Chris? With you?
I think we should. We should do a walk along. We should walk the same distance that Sam and Frodo travel throughout the story.
There's an app for that, by the way.
Oh, wow, that's great.
There's an app for everything. But yeah, the characters in this story are what really drive it through and what make it such an incredible story that lasts for so long. Because it doesn't matter if the technology changes to make the movie less enjoyable visually to watch. What matters is that the connection between those two characters specifically, as well as the connections between the other characters that we get, their love for Gandalf, R.I.P. Gandalf. I hope he comes back. And
I don't think he will.
Oh, poor guy.
I'm calling it right now. Gandalf the Grey. Dead.
Wow.
Good call.
Wow.
Damn.
I'll
This
call
man's
it right
thinking.
now.
He's one step ahead.
I'll call it right now.
That is
The
one hell of
Stranger.
a hoopla theory.
I'll call it right now. The Stranger, Gandalf.
Oh, you
Now,
think
see,
so?
You've already touched on our first Rings of Power reference.
I don't
there.
know. We got to throw him in here and there to
He
get ready for
does
season 2. It's in production.
Give you the line that we get in Rings of Power in this very movie. He says,
When in doubt,
follow the nose.
Meriadoc. Follow your nose. Yeah, I absolutely. Like I said at the top here, I'm very excited to talk through this film and then also related to Rings of Power. I got a couple notes here that I definitely want to get to. So,
all right.
If we don't get them so naturally, you'll have to give me some time at the end because I noticed some pretty cool things.
Well, let's get to him right now.
Oh, dude,
let's just dive in
off the top here. I wasn't necessarily ready for this.
He's bragging about his notes. He's like, I got a
doesn't even
whole
have the
page of
notes.
notes.
I have notes about the whole.
I was lying. I was lying about the notes.
This is
I have notes about the entire film. If you want a Rings of Power relation, give me
Chris,
a second.
Chris,
Here's my
real
first
quick
note
here.
from the
I
very.
might have to pull out the appendices, and I'm going to say I have something in the appendices, and then I'm going to go into a 4,000 page book and start searching.
Oh shit! This is the Silmarillion. Give me a moment. I'll be right back.
Wait.
Wrong book.
All right, go
wrong
ahead.
text. One of my right off the bat, I know we were talking about the Hobbits, and I know how you talking about getting introduced to the Shire. We talk about the Harfoots from Rings of Power. These the precursor, whatever you want to call it, to the traditional hobbits that we know in this third age. Moving on, I think we talked about production, we talked about set design. When we see the Shire for the first time, this was made 20 years ago, like you said. Rings of Power just came out last year. Was it? Wow, 2023?
No, 2022.
22.
It did come out in 22.
The end of 22.
Still, the attention to detail and all of the effort that the production team for Rings of Power put into seeing what the Shire is supposed to look like, and then relating that to a more nomadic people who don't always have the peace that the hobbits want. The Harfoots are living through strife, and yet Bilbo has a great quote right at the beginning when he's writing his book: "For all hobbits share a love for things that grow." And you could just kind of feel that when you're watching the Harfoots too. So just immediately right off the bat, I know Lord of the Rings came out so many years ago, but they clearly did their research when they made Rings of Power. And anyone that says otherwise is wrong.
Yeah.
You tell them.
Well, I do think I do think I'm hoping at least where we see the Harfoots in the end is maybe settling into the Shire and finally finding the peace that all of these hobbits have. But there's the one Hobbit in Bilbo and Frodo. He talks about the rest of the Baggins. They're they love Hobbiton, but there's a little bit of him in Frodo, and it's you imagine before seeing the Hobbit series, you imagine that Bilbo, he's the one Hobbit that's traveled through mountains and fought trolls and orcs and has fought a dragon, and he came and settled back. But he always wanted to get out there. And then Frodo, it shocked me seeing it. I mean, this is probably the 30th time I've seen this movie, but how quickly he takes on the task from Gandalf.
Yes,
he is courageous. I think we often talk about how wonderful Sam is as a character, and I think that's really explored in the second and third movie, how he really helps Frodo along the way. But Frodo is taken to action, and he makes a decision, and he goes forward. At the end of the movie, he knows what he has to do, and he does it, right? I think
spoilers.
In a lot of ways.
Okay,
spoilers.
in case someone hasn't seen the end of Return of the
Jake, have
King.
you seen the end of... I'm just kidding.
What?
No,
You ruined that
just
for
talking
me.
Fellowship. Andy's talking Fellowship at the end when the breaking of the Fellowship.
Yeah.
And yeah, Frodo takes it on and he goes forward even though he is scared. And I think more so over the years, I think I initially didn't necessarily like Frodo that much, but I think more so like this is his story in the end. And it's so interesting to see how he interacts with these just monumentous like tasks in front of him.
Right. Yeah. And the ending again shows Sam's love for Frodo and his desire to keep up with or to protect Frodo on the whole adventure, which is my favorite quote of the whole movie, I think, when Frodo says, "No, Sam, I'm going to Mordor alone." And then Sam says, "I know you are, Mr. Frodo, and I'm coming with you."
See, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
And then
he drowns himself.
And then the film ends.
Yeah, it's crazy. I was actually thinking
I can't believe
this.
they didn't make a sequel.
I know. The book had so much more in it, and they just killed the guy.
He didn't even drown in the book.
Unreal.
But when I was watching the movie this time, I did notice something in the cinematography of it. You get the shot of Sam and Frodo floating off in their boat across the river. The very next shot is a high up, pointed directly down shot of Boromir, his corpse, in the boat. And then you get one shot over to Aragorn, who's kind of sitting there. He adjusts his wrists a little bit. And then the very next shot is Boromir's boat going off a waterfall. So if you just take out like a second and a half of those middle two shots, it would look like Frodo and Sam just fucking plummet off a waterfall.
Yeah, don't look away. Do not look away.
If you cry
Shocked
from the
the
beautiful
audiences.
moment just for 1 second, oh fuck!
Yeah.
He'd be crying for a few more beautiful moments, it sounds like. Yeah, one thing I thought they fleshed out, and maybe y'all will disagree with me on this because you have seen the original trilogy far more than I have, but I thought they did a great job in Rings of Power in terms of fleshing out what such like anomalies these specific courageous hobbits or Harfoots are.
True,
because they're very to themselves people. Nobody goes off trail, nobody walks alone. You work in the Shire, you raise the family, you do your work, you do your daily job, and life is safe, life is comfortable. And it's fun to see these more extreme versions of this specific race in Lord of the Rings go and push their boundaries, and we get to sort of see that hero's journey with them throughout this film, and it's fun because they each have their own sort of personalities. I mean, Merry and Pippin are very similar, which was great casting, by the way. But
how dare you? They are very unique, and I always know which one is which.
Certainly, but even to the point of just method acting, I was watching behind the scenes interviews with Elijah Wood and Sean Astin. Yeah, and Sean Astin would even do things offset for Elijah Wood, intentionally trying to be this like caring, nurturing, helpful friend, nurturing friend. And it's just it's so nice to see how fleshed out this film was to make it as the spectacle that it became.
That's true. And it's kind of wild that Sean Astin in his method acting forgot how to swim intentionally. Weird life choice, but it could really play it off on screen.
Yeah.
I like how...
Keep your nose.
Get this. Viggo Mortensen carried his sword everywhere. Literally
actually
illegal, probably.
Is that open carry? I don't know.
Afraid to fly in helicopters and would walk everywhere.
He took eagles from LA to New York.
That was Sean. That was Sean Bean.
Was that Sean Bean?
Sean Bean.
Okay, that was Sean.
I was actually going to say the same thing.
Nice. I beat you to it, but I got it.
All right,
wrong.
who's got another fun fact? Fun fact. Andy?
Well, I have a small fact, and I'm not just going to bring up like comparisons with the books too much, but one thing that is kind of interesting because I recently reread Fellowship of the Ring is Sam's character is much more of a not a servant, but he's a caretaker for the Baggins.
Yeah,
like he does do their lawn care. He cleans up their place, but in Peter Jackson's films, they're definitely more on the same level in terms of like they're just friends. Like obviously Gandalf does say go, and it is funny because then he just leaves all his family behind, leaves Rosie, his future love. But
he gets Rosie. Don't you worry. Spoilers.
Baby.
Spoilers.
But there's actually another great line at the beginning, which I think is maybe only an extended edition line at the beginning when they leave the bar in the Shire, and Sam's like looking at Rosie, and those drunk idiots are talking to her, and Frodo says, "Don't worry, Sam. Rosie knows an idiot when she sees one." And Sam goes, "Oh shit, does she?"
Yeah.
He says, he's like the drunk man's like, my golden lemon or something, talking to Rosie. It's like, okay, so their bars are very similar to ours.
Yeah. Yeah. You can find a drunk
Andy,
Harfoot anywhere.
I've seen you hit on a blonde barmaid once or twice before after having too many flagons of mead.
Not Andy.
or if it was Gimli, malted beer.
I do have a question. I have a couple questions I'm going to talk about as we go through this. And by the way, we can't really just go scene by scene. We'll be here forever because there's just so much goodness to talk about. But while we're talking about the introduction, the hobbits, and how the adventure kind of just kicks off, obviously Gandalf shows up for, the 111th birthday party and comes across this magical artifact that really should not exist anymore. Lo and behold, it ends up being the One Ring. He has to do all that research and whatnot. When he first notices the ring and touches it for the first time, he sees the eye. it shocks him, it dazes him, and then he goes over to the fire and he's just sitting there smoking his pipe weed,
menacing.
and then
You're just getting high.
Frodo comes in and is like,
just
where the heck did Bilbo go? Why is the ring on the floor? And what is Gandalf doing? But question for you guys, was Gandalf like stunned? Was he under the power of the ring for a small moment? Was this his way of, removing himself from the situation and trying to fight back? I never noticed how like dazed and confused he was just sitting there. Like he barely even notices that Frodo comes in. He's just mumbling.
I always thought it was, they really want to convey the fact that this ring, this power has been so lost to time that even he has forgotten, what it was. Like the effects, even, people don't even know the ring ever existed. So I feel like he's like recollecting, and just thinking this is all done. Like Sauron's been dead for thousands of years. I guess they have been like exploring some darkness, some necromancers, but I that's how I kind of took that scene. I don't think he was sure. I mean, when he sees the eye, I think he's just shocked. Oh, maybe this is just a dark power, but he's like almost sitting back and saying, "There's no way Sauron's back. He must not be, right?"
And maybe he's just stunned in disbelief. Maybe that's what it is.
Maybe we also
I don't
see
know why I lingered on that, but
the ring's effect on a lot of characters throughout this whole movie.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We see it probably most intensely with Boromir at the end of the movie. We see it with Galadriel. We see
Aragorn.
It with Aragorn.
Lord, you shall have a dark queen.
You nailed it.
That was very good, honestly.
By the way, Darby watched
You've been
that
practicing.
scene with me, and she said, "I don't really remember this scene. That was pretty weird."
That's not even extended.
That it was a very shocking terror. When I was, 15, 12 years old, I was terrified at that scene.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm
Scary.
still
Also,
mad
no
by that
CGI.
scene.
Kate Blanchett just learned how to turn
Kate
white.
Blanchett.
Yeah.
It's realism, Peter Jackson.
That does that scare you more than the Bilbo jump
Ooh,
scare?
Those are right neck and neck. No, honestly,
and
I do think the Bilbo. I know when it's about to happen, and I just get ready for it.
I know, yeah.
So there was one moment in this movie that I noticed for the first time watching it just yesterday. Speaking of the ring and its effect on people, when we go to the Council of Elrond, and when that big argument breaks out, where everyone's like, what do we do with the ring? We got to use its power. We got to destroy it. You can't take it. I will, blah, blah. The fight. We get a shot. He's looking at the ring and he sees the reflection of all these men and elves and dwarves fighting with each other reflected in the ring.
Yeah,
and you can see how the ring's influence is causing all of this to happen. Even from just sitting there on a pedestal without anybody even getting in contact with it. This is a terrible ring to have, which means we should all feel sorry for Frodo, even more than we already do.
It's not even.
He's a hero.
It's not even just the visual cues as well, Jamie. It's they distort how the sound of the movie around that. It's just almost a cloud. Every time they focus on the ring, there's a cloud around them, like a madness descending upon whoever's looking at it. And it really makes me think, not that I need another What If series, but if the Fellowship stayed together, Galadriel says, one by one they'll fall. And then they immediately have obviously the Boromir scene, but right after the scene with Aragorn, where the ring calls to him, like, I think it's interesting, like how menacing they make the ring in 10 minutes of this film, and it just ascends, it crescendos all the way to the climactic ending.
Yeah, it's a powerful artifact, and in such a simple little design. I think it's widely misunderstood for a lot of the characters how much potential it has to corrupt you. The hearts of men, definitely, but even elves. I mean, Galadriel herself, when offered the ring freely, says, "I passed the test."
That's what you look
And I
like.
shall diminish
Now I can
to the west.
sail to Valinor. Which brings us back to the Rings of Power.
Yeah,
When in
she's
episode
already tried
1
to
or
go
2,
there.
Yeah.
she turned back around. Ooh,
called it.
maybe.
Mm-hmm. That's right. Yeah. And Galadriel in this movie, obviously great. The first introduction we get from, I think this is an extended. Oh, I know I started like 3 plot lines right there. Can I say something real quick?
Say whatever you
This
like.
is to you guys, but this is also to directors and any editors out there who are working on big budget movies that have extended edition releases. All I want is when I'm watching an extended edition, just put a little X,
Oh.
little something in the corner,
So you
maybe
know.
like a little film camera or something that tells me this is an extended scene that was cut for theatrical release.
That's a good idea. You're onto something there, Chris. Because
No,
because a lot of the time it's easy to get confused what the original work is.
Yeah.
And then it just all sort of blends together, and we just have to talk about the extended edition always.
Exactly.
No-
I feel like when I'm watching on TV, not only is it less than the theatrical release because they've already cut some for time, but I start to miss scenes. I'm like, wait a second, I thought that was in the real movie. You're exactly right, Jake. It all blends together. So that's a shout out.
you know what?
Not a shout
This-
out. That's a demand.
Yeah, let's start making demands on this podcast. We're on video now. We are
Peter
demanding.
Jackson, I want you to re-release the extended versions with a little X. You know,
A little
right
ring. It should be a
little
ring.
Oh,
at
it
the
should be a
top
ring.
right.
That's a great
And you know
point.
what? You can just release it for $100.
Oh, it could
You
be
know,
a
and we'll all
ring.
buy
I
it.
could-
So why not
I'll buy
just
it twice.
re-release
I'm talking-
the entirety of the series again? Right,
So-
Warner Brothers?
We're talking about, maybe scenes blending together. If you don't know if it's theatrical extended, but Jake, I have a question for you
I
specifically.
have an answer for you
Because you've watched this movie fewer times than the rest of us.
significantly.
What is the one thing that really stands out to you from the Fellowship of the Ring? Having only seen it a couple times,
And you can't say.
but whenever
Rosie.
you think of the
I'm
Fellowship of the Ring,
I'm out.
other than Rosie, what's the one thing where you're like, hell yeah, this is Fellowship. This is the moment.
Well, if we're speaking literally, fellowship, I think you got to tie it to just the relationship between the hobbits. The friendship between the 4 of them is really just such a delight to watch and just see them all interact with all these individuals who have lived these very serious lives and have these very
Right.
major responsibilities in their
Like
particular
Merry and
yeah yeah, and how they become basically a farce for all these other worlds, but that's what they are, and how they make light of everything in such like a dark, ominous presence.
Damn.
I think
That's so
Yeah.
true.
That was
I
very
think it's
beautiful
just
and
fun.
insightful.
I think it's just
You're
fun to
fucking
watch.
wrong. The
I mean,
correct answer is you shall not pass.
I mean, the Balrog is fucking
Yeah,
dope. I'm not kidding.
The correct answer is certainly Balin's combat fight against the cave troll. But Jake, what you said is pretty good too. No, Jake, you're absolutely right. You're free to think whatever you want, and I think a lot of people would agree with you. To narrow that down a little bit more, in terms of you kind of give it just general concept. The hobbits are great. It's that one foil from all the seriousness of the movie. We could go back to the Council of Elrond 100 times to talk about 100 different concepts from the film, but I think that is where the Hobbit lightheartedness is most relevant, because you have Elrond, who I was there 3,000 years
like
ago.
the epicness,
when
the
rings-
grandeur of Elrond
Yeah,
to the
yes.
small community of the 4 hobbits.
Correct.
Exactly, yeah. And then he's all serious. So be it. The fellowship must prevail. You must cast the ring into the fires of Mount Doom. And then all of a sudden, Samwise, Merry, and Pippin are popping out of different locations. Obviously, they were dropping eaves on them. and he's just like, okay, I guess this is just what hobbits
And then
do.
Pippin says, "And where are we going?"
Yeah. You need someone with sort of smarts on the mission quest thing.
So yeah, I enjoy that.
Jake, you can't say community of hobbits without mentioning Farmer Maggot's crop. You know, that scene is just wonderful.
You've been into Farmer Maggot's crops
And-
again.
By the way, we're talking about the opening of the movie. The writers are terrifying, and it's
Absolutely.
The writers or
the
the
writers, the writers.
Because it could be. I mean, either
the-
or. I mean,
You know which writers were terrifying? Quantum.
Well, that's true.
Chris,
That's
stop
true.
talking
Did you
about
say
these things on the
Secret
podcast.
Invasion?
I'm sorry.
Wait,
Lord
I
of the
thought we
Rings,
liked
Lord of the
Quantum
Rings, Lord
Mania
of the Rings.
more than Secret Invasion. I guess we
Lord of the
kinda
Rings.
did. But
The Black.
I just
Yeah,
got to
the
give a
Black
quick
Riders, the
shout
Black
out
Riders.
to my friend Natalia and John, who made me this custom mug
Oh,
with
okay.
a little Hoopla wizard on it. So
oh, that's
Oh,
dope.
just
Hoopla.
to distract
Hoopla.
from the Quantum Mania talk. And
Thank you, Natalia and
Can
John.
Can our viewers get their own Hoopla mug?
you can fucking
Hoopla,
try.
And if you try and copy it, we're coming after you.
Yeah, but Chris brings up a
We are
great
litigious as hell.
point. Chris brings a great point up. Where could they go, Andy, if they wanted to go?
If you are looking for Hoopla, merch.
Hoopla Podcast Network.square.site or call Jamie's friend for a nice mug.
That's true. Yeah, if you follow the show on all of our social media platforms and then text me about it, I will have one of these made personally for you. You're welcome.
Wow.
The
The Black Riders.
ring wraiths
The
are
ring wraiths.
terrifying.
Yes.
Continue.
Many names.
So you start off the the series, right, with seeing the grandeur of Sauron, but then they thrust you into the community of the Shire. And there's some lightheartedness, there's levity, there's some oddness with Bilbo, there's some mystery happening there. But then when they show Smeagol getting tortured and crying out Baggins, Shire, and then they show from Minas Morgul the 9 riders riding out, and it's shocking. Like it goes from a really small scene to, like, once again, a grand, like, enemy is coming towards you. And then miraculously, because they fast forward in time 13 years, or it's not really that in the movie, they're in the Shire. And you see immediately when you first see them in the Shire, you see one kill a hobbit that's kind of a watchman, and then it just progresses and progresses, and then you see the fear of not like the ring. It's so foreboding, and then on the road, it distorts. And Frodo and Merry and Pippin and Sam, they get on the side of the road, and they're all just eating Farmer Maggot's crop. But then that is a terrifying introductory scene between the 4 hobbits and the riders, when when his horse rides out, this dark horse, and then he puts his hand over, and then there's a worm that comes out. It's a little disgusting.
Oh yeah.
I just think that is a wonderful introduction to enemies that are later in the movie,
Spoilers.
in the series, but in the first opening act, it's that is what Sauron is to the viewer, like this evil, and they come like as almost demonic type entities coming after the good people that are the hobbits.
And then we
Really
see
interesting.
the orcs later in the movie, and the birth scenes of the orcs and the Uruk-hai getting pulled out of
like
this
that either.
nasty,
Yeah.
gross
That's mud.
mud.
Yeah.
Whom do
The
you
muck.
serve?
Yeah.
I serve you,
We'll call it
Chris.
the muck. Yeah.
The muck.
But speaking
I
of,
think the first act
the-
does really well to establish the light and dark concepts, but at the same time, they don't really throw you into it and say, "Okay, these are the hero characters, these are the bad characters." Obviously, the Nazgul are, what am I trying to say? Ominous, menacing. They stab Frodo on top of Weathertop, if you could even
They
consider
run
that the
over
first
that
act.
that nice person just guarding the Bree gate.
well, he
Yeah,
gets
and
freaking
then-
pancaked. Poor guy.
Yeah, and then it's pancaked, and then they immediately go into the inn. Everyone
Yeah.
scrambles. The innkeeper, who was so nice
Yeah.
to them, is like hiding and just praying for his life. And then they go up and they stab the beds, and it's like, oh wow, they were kind of scary, and they were hiding from him under the tree at one point. Now it's serious. As we get into Act 2, they were ready to just kill hobbits as they were sleeping. So you understand now that yes, they were scary. Yes, they are forces of evil, but they're not playing around.
They're mean.
I think that sets the
powerful.
tone for the rest of the film. Yeah.
So here's a question for you, bringing it back to the Rings of Power a little bit. Let's
Please
do a
do.
little theorizing here. Are we going to meet these ring wraiths in the Rings of Power? Because we do know that
Oh, I think we
the
already
ring
have.
wraiths.
I was going to say.
Who? Okay,
I think we
Jakey,
have as
please,
well.
please elaborate. Who have we met?
I would love to elaborate, but I think we should let the experts, Christopher and Andor, handle that.
No.
When it comes to
Jake, you have to answer the
names,
question.
when it comes to names,
All right,
But-
well, let's ignore the names.
but I will say, ignoring names, I think we've already met a good number of the ring wraiths already in season 1 of the show. I would be shocked if otherwise.
Ooh,
I think
Yeah.
I think that would be the greatest opportunity for them to flesh out the expanse of power of these rings. I mean, it's in the name. It's in the name.
it's in the name. So, Jakey, what do you
To
think?
do it.
Jake, Jake, what do you think is going to happen with these men who receive the rings and then eventually turn into the ring wraiths? What do you think is going to happen to them in their transitional period in the
Sure,
Rings of Power?
it's going to be fun to see everyone be driven mad. Ultimately, they're going to destroy themselves and one another, and in doing so, we're going to get that transition of lust for power to a transformation to evil. And the directions they can take this can be kind of fun. We have Gandalf already in the show. It's going to be interesting to see. It's going to
Here's
be
what I'm
interesting
thinking.
to see how that stands up against the large scale of evil that's mounting in the Rings of Power. So
Mount Dooming.
Mount Dooming. Hey, hey.
Here's what I hope
Yeah.
to see in the Rings of Power, as you're saying, this
Now,
pull towards
I'm
evil.
going to interject.
Okay.
Would you like me to give you some background information on the ring wraiths before you make a grandiose theory?
Oh, you mean before I make a hilarious joke that you just ruined? Yeah,
Oh,
I would.
oh,
I'm sorry, go for it. Oh no, I thought you were actually putting a theory together. I'm sorry.
Go on, give me the facts.
Well, we don't know the identities of most of the ring wraiths, if any. Really, the Witch King of Angmar, obviously we know that.
Which
There's
king?
another one named...
Got him.
You got your joke in anyway, didn't you? God. There's another one, Kamul, who has some data about him, Lord of the Easterlings. Lots of stuff happening in the evil East that we don't worry about.
But we
And
may
then
see in the show.
3 of them, well, that's what I'm thinking. 3 of them are Numenorians. All of them were fallen men. We know that. But 3 of them are Numenorians, which means they're obviously extra powerful. I don't know if I want to see the downfall of the ring race in Rings of Power, because that means they're kind of making up lore. And I think they've done in season 1, Rings of Power, a really good job of kind of sticking to it and just playing with it a little bit. But if you start making up names for these powerful creatures, I don't know.
It's
if I wanna
almost
see
like
them go that way.
Hallbrand
What-
is a made-up character.
Okay, but Sauron takes on many identities. And stuff
They're
like
going
that.
to. I'm 100%. They're going to show the changing, because they have to. The Rings of Power is all about creating the rings, whether it's the dwarven rings one's going to go to Durin
Yep.
and the shit's going to go bad. But there's the elven rings. There's the men.
Sure,
and there's Sauron.
But Jake, you think we've already met?
I have a theory on one of
Not
the
all of
characters.
them, but I do think we have met a decent number of them already so far. And I think that would just be very appealing as an audience member to like enjoy these characters when they're not, evil. Yeah. Yeah.
Or dead, or
yeah, when they're
wraiths,
not
or
when
of
they're
the
not
shadow.
terrible,
When they're not the embodiment of everything bad. Yeah, when one of them is just a kid, he hasn't turned evil yet. He's but a child. We have seen one of our rings now in the Rings of Power and in the Fellowship of the Ring on Galadriel's finger.
Nenya,
Yes.
the Ring of Adamant.
First of all, actually, I have a nitpick from the show. I love the visual of Nyenya in the Fellowship of the Ring, and that ring looks so much better than the one that they created in that pretty shoddily made Rings of Power scene of here's the forging of the 3 elven rings. That's one of the that's a nitpick of for myself.
Yeah, how did
for
they
Rings
not
of
just
Power.
perfectly recreate? Like, you have the visual from the movie, just copy it.
Like,
How did
make
they
the
mess
ring
that
look
up?
pretty cool.
Okay, well, maybe it's changed over time. It's put into a different setting. It's got different embroidering. I don't know. Chill.
No,
No.
never. What? Are you kidding me?
I'm on a
We'll never
podcast
do.
talking about
This
Lord
is
of the Rings.
Hoopla Podcast. I do like that they, in the extended version, Galadriel speaks a little bit more to Frodo. Like they extend a lot of the scenes that I think give you a lot of backstory. I get why they took them out of the theatrical cut, because it does slow down the plot in some ways, some of these long drawn out scenes, but it does. I love, there's, especially in Lothlorien, when they get to Lothlorien, when they're getting on the boat, they have extended sequences with giving of gifts. And like where
the gift scene is my favorite extended
where
scene.
Celeborn talks to Aragorn about there's orcs on the side, and he gives them another sword. That is really entertaining, and also it just kind of like it gives you a little bit more information. Not that you necessarily need it, but I love Lothlorien and just sitting there for a bit.
Yeah, every city that we go to is so beautiful.
Yeah.
Like, we have great interactions with characters everywhere. All that stuff is good, but the sets are so beautiful and unique. Every new place that we go is entirely different from the previous place. Even when we have 2 elven cities that we go to, they look nothing alike. You can tell that they have elven influences, and they're kind of like tall buildings up. Oh, Chris disagrees.
No.
Well, no, I agree with you. I'm just saying Bree is kind of a shithole.
Yeah, because it's the city of men, or a
Yeah.
town of men. They don't deserve anything.
How about the men in Bree? They're walking around. They're eating like moldy bread. They're half their teeth. They're all unshaven, and then they look at the hobbits and they're like spit at them and like kind of walk past them. And it's like they're like kids walking by you, and they're so gruff. It's like what happened in the
Men
city
are
of
bad.
Bree?
Men are bad. That's
That's the moral of the Lord of the Rings.
Okay,
I
but
think.
tell me, what's the difference between Bree and then when you get to Rohan and Gondor, which are
Bree is
men of honor?
generally softer. Oh,
That's
good
true.
question.
That's true.
It's nice with wine.
all right. And cut.
I'm gonna have to leave.
It's nice with wine. What would you pair Rohan with? A nice Malbec?
Yeah.
You need something heartier. Yeah.
That is a good question, though, Andy.
I-
Bree sucks, but at
Bree's
these
been through some
grand...
shit.
yeah.
If we're talking about cities and locales, I would like to bring up Khazad-dûm and the mines of Moria. We see that in Rings of Power. There's another little tidbit right there
And
to
its
relate
glory.
back to the show.
The
And it's
Balrog.
beautiful. I mean, I remember in our episodes when we talked about the Rings of Power, when it was live and coming out actively, go watch those episodes.
Listen.
Sorry. Go listen to those
Watch this
episodes.
one. Watch future episodes.
Watch this one. Yes.
Or listen to both.
Or listen to both. But we remarked on how such a great job they did in the Rings of Power of portraying Moria in its heyday. When the mining operation was just getting underway and they were looking for the Mithril and there was flowing water and greenery and sunlight in Moria, which was something we truly don't see, obviously, in the Fellowship, because rest in peace, all the dwarves.
Balin.
And
Lord of
Balin did not make it.
Lord of Moria.
But it's just it's so beautiful to see it in the Rings of Power, and then to rewatch Fellowship again. The production team definitely did their job when they did, the Mines of Moria in Rings of Power, but to watch Fellowship again, it's just like, wow, what was once a beautiful city full of people, and the dwarves have always kind of kept to themselves, but we see in the show that elves come and go, and then we even get a glimpse or a hint at this in Fellowship, where the door to Moria is speak friend and enter in Elvish. So things used to be a lot better between the dwarves and the elves. They were never perfect, but that to me is one of the more telling locales of Fellowship, because not only is it not empty, there are enemy forces there, but you can, when you walk into Darreldelf, the tall pillars, and Gandalf has such a great line, "Let me risk a little more light," because he didn't want to come into the Mines of Moria for obvious reasons, but he'll risk the light to give himself away so that these hobbits, these people who have never seen the grandeur of Middle Earth in this way, can view it in its pride and its true glory. I just think that scene is so cool, and underneath the Mines of Moria, very neat.
The Kingdom of Darreldelf, when the shot kind of recedes, and you can see from the viewpoint really of the Fellowship looking up at the pillars, the music crescendos, and it is such a climactic kind of moment where you just wish you knew what this place was. But then it immediately takes you to Balin's tomb. So it tells you this is dead. This place has been dead. But there was once a time where it was one of the greatest kingdoms in Middle Earth. It's a really cool. Once again, this is where you don't know much about the dwarves. You hear Gimli make some funny jokes. You see his dad sitting next to him in the council meeting, but really you don't know much about dwarves until this moment to see what they had created. And then it gives you then the mystery of, well, then what happened?
Or you could watch 8 hours of Hobbit films that no one asked for.
Ooh, yeah, you could do that.
Or
you could.
I think we should do another rewatch. I'm ready.
I do want to do a rewatch of season 1 before season 2 drops this summer.
Oh, we will.
Absolutely.
This summer?
I thought it was 25.
What, is it 25?
Yeah, it's not this summer.
I thought it was
If by this summer we
by
mean
this summer, do you mean
by
this
next summer.
summer.
We're gonna watch it twice. We're gonna watch it this summer, and we're gonna watch it next summer.
Sure.
Absolutely. One thing I do want to just sort of speak to is, the Rings of Power got a lot of negative feedback from just the general populace who's trying to watch this show casually. And I really do think it is an insult, considering, we've seen other franchises try to explore other areas of their world or their lore, and it hasn't mounted anywhere near or amounted to anything that was previously produced.
Yeah.
The Rings of Power actually does a good job. It was actually a sound storyline. It had its imperfections. We can all agree to that. But it was fun to watch. It was entertaining, and it brought all of the different elements that we love about Lord of the Rings to the screen. And so I just want to say I greatly appreciated the content, and the feedback was undeserving. So
we have a fact check here, and Jake Laxer is right. We are going to get a 2024 Rings of Power season 2. Production.
You heard it here first, folks.
Production was completed last July on Rings of Power.
During the strike?
Wow, the person who
English.
knows the least about Lord of the Rings knows the most.
Well, it seems you know the most about Rings of Power.
You know what? Okay,
I'm
I
impressed
want you to tell me all about the Argonath and really the scene with.
Don't do that to him.
Do you remember when that
Jake, I'm gonna
blue
take your
guy
point.
did that thing with the T-shirt and the Argonaut?
Dude, that was Sonic the Hedgehog.
Oh shit,
buddy.
my bad. I thought you said Sonic the Hedgehog.
Before you talk yourself into a hole, I'm going to take your good point and run with it for a
You
sec.
should.
I agree Rings of Power got more hate than love, and I don't think that was justified, but I'm watching Fellowship for this podcast to rewatch and just get embraced with the world again. They're saying and doing the things that the Rings of Power team put together and put to screen in a great TV show. We're hearing Valinor, we're hearing the Dunedain, we're hearing all of these different things that you might not really get as a casual watcher when watching Lord of the Rings for the first time, but so much research and so much care was put into making sure that Tolkien's world was explored correctly. And yeah, they took some liberties with some things, Jake, like you said. There was some imperfections, some things we're maybe still looking forward to in season 2, but anyone that was hating on Rings of Power just needs to watch Fellowship and really the whole trilogy again and think, okay, they kind of nailed it,
Right?
Just
what they were going.
don't stare at Galadriel Warrior Princess too hard.
Don't
You know,
just
yeah,
fast forward to the slow mo scene and you'll be
You
fine.
know, yeah. But take it how
the point is, this wasn't expedited. Like Chris was saying, this was well fleshed out in the design and production process. And I think with time, people will get on board and will learn to fall in love with this series. I think, the sky's the limit with Rings of Power. I really, truly, and ultimately believe that they have the budget for it. And man, if they flop, this is like a Carolina Panthers situation. I have no other analogy for how that would unfold. But truly, there's a lot of care and commitment to making this project go above and beyond. So I do want to see season 2 continue to crescendo, like Andy would allude to, and see where it goes. I don't know.
All right, I have someone to
Numenorians.
talk about. We haven't brought him up, but maybe once. And it's the true MVP of this show, or of this movie. And that's Boromir. Why have we not talked more about Boromir?
Boromir's a hero.
It's true. Yeah.
I think, and I'm going to, I always make these proclamations and I come back to regret it. But I think that Boromir's arc in Fellowship of the Ring is the best single movie arc that ends in this most justified death. His he has the best arc that starts with him meeting Aragorn to then becoming kind of the villain of the film to then his heroic moment for Merry and Pippin that really set the stage for the rest of the series. And then his final moments. First of all, how many times have you guys watched one of your favorite characters die on screen in the most lackluster, kind of way, right? Like head falls over and it's like, oh, that's not really how that. This is
Kang the Conqueror was beaten by ants.
exactly.
And then he was turned into a piece of pasta.
That's true.
fun.
Spoilers. You can't talk about the pasta. Season 2 Loki. Don't think of it.
Oh my god!
Go back.
Anyway,
to
Boromir.
Do
Yes,
not
and
bring up Loki season 2.
We
epic.
need to get better about our tangents and jokes being
My brother,
one line.
my captain, my king, and then he passes away. And the way that it affects Aragorn immediately, at that moment, and of course this was going to happen, it's a series, he's going to become king because he has... Boromir gave him almost permission, like he's on his side. His dying wish was him to be his brother, his captain, his king, and just an amazing ending to a character. I think
Boromir is
he
a
might
hero.
Too bad Boromir couldn't have said that to his brother. It really would have changed.
His actual brother. Yeah.
True.
He was too far
Well,
away.
we get a lot of that, and we're getting ahead of ourselves. And by the way, we are going to do all 3 of the movies in this original trilogy, so definitely stay tuned to the Hoopla podcast for that. We get more of the Boromir-Faramir relationship, and Sean Bean even comes back.
And
I
the
imagine it was
extended.
just used content in the extendeds, it was just probably used content from the first filming, because he comes back in Two Towers for a couple of scenes with Faramir, and they're great. But we're getting ahead of ourselves there. When we talk about Boromir, and Andy, you are saying now the number one single movie arc for any character.
I mean, that was bold. That was a bold statement, but my God.
I like where you're going, though. And the arc starts before you even know who Boromir is. I put a note down on the scene. You meet Boromir kind of for the first time when Aragorn is reading in this council chamber where the shards of Narsil are being held. And you look upon Aragorn just kind of basking in the light of his ancestors, understanding how important the shards of Narsil are. Boromir just kind of walks up. He's like, oh, it's a broken sword. No way. This is pretty famous, right? And then just drops it.
And he cuts himself.
The sword.
Yeah.
He cuts himself, drops the sword, realizes that it's dropped. And here's the important part that I'll throw your way in terms of the arc. My brother, my captain, my king. Aragorn goes and picks it up, puts it back in its resting place, and understands the importance of being there to pick up the sword when needed. It's a great bit of foreshadowing. Maybe the blood could be construed as Boromir is going to perish in this film. That might be a bit of a reach, but that is an awesome scene to kick off the arc, and I couldn't agree more, Andy.
I feel like when he looks at the mural on the wall, he knows that he comes from the stewards. He's a steward of the throne. He's not Isildur's heir that's standing there with the sword. And then when he cuts his hand, and then just feels the gaze of this ranger and drops it, almost like, we don't need you, like, get away from us. Right.
Yeah.
We're Gondor.
Boromir is an absolute hero, an incredible character who is often seen as kind of the villain of this movie. He's seen as a bad guy trying to steal the ring from Frodo, but his
intentions are they're pure.
His intentions are pure, and he's also the weakest by far against the power of the rings. Yeah. We know that men are way more susceptible to this power than anybody else. And the fact that he's able to recover from that moment where he finally does attack Frodo turns invisible and escapes. And after a few minutes, Boromir's able to recover, realize what he did, and then turn around and protect the other hobbits. He's overcome by the power of this ring. That's not his fault. He's just a weak little man. And still, he is fighting for the honor of his people and his friends. And he got an honorable ending in this movie. And there are a lot of other characters that we need to talk about, but I think we can save them because they're still alive for next week. When we get more with Legolas and Gimli and Aragorn, who we haven't talked too much about today, but we'll talk about them next time. So tune in next week as we talk about the Two Towers for another video podcast episode of the Hoopla Podcast. But now, as we start to bring this episode to a close, as we do every episode, we look at this ad on Chris's TV.
I knew it would happen.
And then we give our Hoopla rating for this movie.
Oh my goodness.
And since it is Hobbit Hoopla, we're giving it on a scale of 1 to 11 Hooplas. Jake Laxer, what do you think about the Fellowship of the Ring?
Honestly, I love this movie. It's so fun. I wish I had time to watch it again prior to doing this podcast, but I did not. I'm going to dock myself points for that, but I have to give this at least a 104 out of 11 Hooplas. I mean, this movie just brings you into the Tolkien world, and you just love it from the second you step foot and you say, I'm 1 foot farther than I've ever been from the Shire, and you just never turn back, right? 3 days later, right, Chris? It's like it's a beautiful journey. And all the characters are so distinct and so ripe with objectives and their own personalities, and the scenes themselves are amazing, and it's just the 3 hours just goes by like that, and if you're watching the extended edition, the 4 hours goes by just like that. And quite honestly, what's the difference? I don't have something in the corner telling me what the different scenes are.
That's
so
true.
Thank you.
That's true.
but yeah, 104. Can't wait to watch more. That's what I got.
Hell yeah. Two Towers coming up soon. Chris, what did you think about The Fellowship of the Ring?
I mean, what more can be said? I think Fellowship, you turn it on, and even for like a first time viewer, if you're trying to get someone into the series, yeah, you're gonna miss a couple of the buzzwords that longtime Tolkien fans are gonna relate to more. Obviously, if you've seen the trilogy and you're watching with a new person, you have to kind of keep quiet on certain things that are gonna happen, but it's very evident from the start that this movie is doing its best to adapt something that was already beautiful. And I think they just nailed it. All three of the movies don't deserve any score under 100. Fellowship, just by the unfortunate positioning of it being the first and, not as grandiose as the following two, I think I'm going to give it 100. Because I don't think you can have it be under 100 in terms of scale of 11D1, but it's definitely not the best of the three. Definitely not
Some would
worse
say it is,
than
though.
100.
I would say
Someone say it's the best. They're wrong. Fight
honestly,
me in the comments.
let's hear it, Jamie. Yeah.
No, I'm just excited for this fight that's about to happen.
I do not think it's best. I think it is the third best as well. But
that's what I'm saying.
But I'm saying there's a huge contingent of Tolkien fans that love Fellowship the most, and I don't disagree. The way that this movie and the book, based on the book, sets up this series is masterful. Like if the first 14-15 minutes doesn't work as well as it does, this whole series would not work. Like the grounding of the Shire is so incredible, and in you meeting these different races, I every time I rewatch that just exposition dump by Galadriel at the beginning, I hate exposition dumps in movies, and I love them recapping the Second Age, and it's so easy to understand. You immediately see the elves in their golden armor in all their magnificence. You see the conquering of this giant Satan type creature by the one man with wielding the one sword right after his father just died. There's just such an epicness to it, and then it goes to the hobbits, and that is just an incredible opening. And that's not even my favorite part of the movie, because the Council of Elrond is incredible, followed up by Dwero-Delph and Khazad-dûm and Lothlorien. Like,
are you talking yourself into picking this as your favorite?
Oh my god, I love this movie. Should I name it my favorite? It's not. I'm not gonna.
No,
before you name first, give us a 1 to 11D1.
11D1. 106.
Ooh, I love it. We'll see how that stands over the next 2 weeks to see if this makes it to your number one Lord of the Rings movie. Okay. I'm going to give this
it's
movie
on a rewatch, so you can change your opinion over time.
108 out of 11D1, but unfortunately, I do have to deduct 5 points because Tom Bombadil doesn't show up, even in the extended edition. What the hell are we doing here, making a freaking Fellowship of the Rings movie?
You gotta
Fellowship of the Ring.
Okay,
with no Tom Bombadil?
And Goldberry,
if you're gonna ask that question,
Goldberry, you're not gonna put Goldberry in this.
There's not a single Goldberry.
And what about
and for that reason, it gets the bronze.
Yeah,
I think the bigger question is why did Tolkien just introduce a random character in the middle of the woods that has more power and mystery?
He's not a random character, and I will fight you to the death that he's not a random character. I think he's a major character in the Tolkien universe. No matter.
Okay. Oh, you guys can read. Sick breath. Let's move on.
Hey, do you even know who Tom Bombadil is? Get off my level.
We will find out who Tom Bombadil is in The Rings of Power season 2, 3, 4. Who knows?
Is that our first actual theory of the pod?
That's the first theory.
What if
anyway,
Tom Bombadil is a ring wraith?
Oh,
what if you've seen him all along?
No, he can't be. 'Cause
Wow.
He put the ring on his finger and it didn't have any power over him. So,
Oh my
you know,
god!
it is
There
what
we
it
go.
is. Get out of here with your Tom Bombadil theories.
Thank you for tuning into the Hoopla Podcast. Tune in again next week for our discussion of the Two Towers and probably also the Rings of Power and everything that has to do with the Lord of the Rings, Middle Earth, Tolkien, everything delightful. And we'll get to see Jake's two plants yet again.
Yay! There they are.
So follow us on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, all that good stuff. And as we end every episode, it is time for the moment of highest hoopla, the quote of the movie.
The quote of the movie is an interaction that we didn't talk about here, where Frodo says, "I wish it need not have happened in my time." Gandalf says, "So do I, and so do all who live to see such times, but that is not for them to decide. All we have to decide is what to do with the time that is given to us." I love that quote. I think it's an all-time cinematic quote.
It's absolutely fantastic. And it comes back in the end when Frodo's
Yes.
standing on the beach thinking
Yeah.
about his best friend
His
Gandalf.
journey. Yeah.
Oh, beautiful.
That quote's so good. Those writers are so terrifying.
Oh, the scariest
Yeah,
writers.
the writers.
Oh no. What will they come up with next?
Yeah.